Welcome back to Street Level Marketing with your host, Mark Lamplugh. Here with Samuel Epstein, and we're talking about scaling call centers, more specifically in the mental and behavioral health space. But a lot of what we're talking about can apply in any type of call center. So I want to get in talking about how does the call center play a role in the patient retention, like post intake?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways that they ensure that there's patient retention. Also, if a patient is to become an alumni, we want to make sure that there's regular follow-ups. So creating a guideline on follow-ups, traditionally I'd like to set, day one, day three, day seven, 2 weeks, 1 month, every month thereafter for at least a year. I think that's like a good starting for the follow-ups, regular checking calls, even, post admission, as soon as they get in there, they're going to have the strongest rapport, right? So, as the patients are admitting, making sure they're getting on the phone once again, with the admissions rep and, going over expectations and, any kind of additional questions now that they've made it on site. And then, more of the alumni outreach, right? So more regular follow-ups, ensuring that, they're staying in contact with the people on site. Becomes less about the sale at that point. It's more about the support.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, especially with behavioral mental health, when you're doing the admission, that admission very well could be into another facility for some sort of stabilization before they come to you. And I always found it's very important that when you built the rapport up with that patient, to send somebody that if you can, as a provider, go meet with them in that stabilization program, because there's a potential that they might not make it back to you because of circumstances with other programs and things like that. So that's very important.
Yeah, definitely the hands-on approach, right? This is the case of, the more the better, right? It will
Yeah.
definitely pay off doing more. It'll pay off more in the long run, dedicating that time up front.
Yeah. What systems are you using to manage referral relationships?
Yeah, so we have we've used designated CRMs. That's traditionally what I've seen be the most effective, right? Referral relationships don't necessarily look like, one for one, right? That's not always going to be the way we're looking at that, especially when we're talking about reimbursements from healthcare providers, right? So, gauging, the quality of the referral, whether it's, length of stay with the patients that we're referring out, or we're receiving on the referral end. And also, the reimbursement, is it in network? Is it out of network? Traditionally, that we can monitor and log all that in a CRM.
Yeah. How do you train agents to qualify leads and build trust with referral sources?
Yeah, I think it comes down to being aligned, having shared values. As long as there's that shared value, right? And, just like traditional, even like Roman Catholic vows, right? They say these two came together, right? And I think emphasizing that togetherness with our referral partners, and we're on the same page, we're in it for the same reasons, we have the same goals outlined, making sure that's very clear from the front, rather than having that conversation later on when, someone feels like they're, being they got the short end of the stick, I guess is the best way to put it. It's harder to clean that up. So we want to be clear that we have shared values and goals on the front end.
Yeah. How are you handling the follow-up calls without being pushy?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I've definitely seen where we have reps that aren't pushy, and the patient takes it as pushy. So I think it starts with emphasizing honesty on those calls, right? That they're there for support. Yes, this is a job, being human and telling them that, like, this is a job, but we're here for support. It's more or less like a value-based approach, so it's we're letting them know that, this is a part of the process as well. This is good for you. Yes, as a business, We do want to make sure that you come back to us because we're giving you great care, and we're going to emphasize that as well. But also, no matter how you're doing, because we're not only looking for the patients to come back to the facility that they went to, right? Birds of a feather flock together, and personal advocacy is the best marketing in the world. So by doing this follow-up with these patients and offering that support, the hopes are that they do succeed and they don't need to come back to treatment ever again. And, they really value that support and are willing to refer others, that they know need some more help.
That's a really good point. It kind of goes in my next thought. What are some of the strategies that you use to turn clients into referral sources?
Yeah, so alumni testimonies, that's a big one. We use the traditional ways too, Google reviews, that definitely helps. Family outreach, that's a really big one. Setting up like a multifamily group, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever that may be, that's really important. When people feel seen, they want to share. That's just natural about just human nature in general. I've just found that to be true with any kind of population. So, we want to make sure that they do feel seen, and we have the expectation that by providing them that, they'll want to share their experience.
Plus, that really comes down to the care that you provide too. I mean, you provide a really good product. They're going to want to refer to their friends and family.
Totally.
I've been thinking about this, and that's kind of goes into my next thought. But especially with the behavioral mental health space, callers may have that kind of spur of the moment. They want to get help, but then they kind of fall off because they're not ready. They don't, they got obligations that they, don't want to overcome at the moment. How do you manage a call cadence for re-engaging leads that you may have not got in?
Yeah, it's important that, when you're launching the call center or even scaling, that you set up these structured sequences, right? So as they, if they're saying they have, a rebuttal to why they can't come in now, as of today, that we have structured sequences to follow up. So, oftentimes you'll hear, we have to talk to our wife or our husband, right? And instead of putting the ball in their court and letting them decide when they're going to call back, you definitely want to have the reps trained to ensure that they're going to set a time, right? So if they're saying, for instance, I have to talk to my wife, she gets home from work at 5, it's a great time for the admissions rep to step in and say, okay, perfect. So, it'll take you about 30, 45 minutes. I'll give you a call at like 5:30 if that works for you, right? So we definitely want to keep the momentum moving, so that they don't go cold. Because once they go cold, it's definitely going to be harder to pull them back in, especially with advertising, when we're talking about like paid search, right? They might not even remember how they originally got in contact with us. They're just clicking the ads. So we don't want to put the ball in their court. And if they do go cold, more stretched out, softer touch points, obviously if they're going cold, they could have gone somewhere else, right? So calling them every day, if they're in rehab and they don't have their phone, that's not going to help, right? So identifying where they're at, how cold it is, and then establishing a sequence.
Now, are you involving alumni or former patients in the call process?
Selectively, peer voices, they can be powerful. Like I said earlier, especially in testimonials. But it's a very selective thing. If we have a potential patient who, wants that, it's definitely worth, including that in the training of the call center to be able to manage what that would look like. But it's got to be selective, and then there's also the privacy part of it, right? So we have to ensure that we do remain compliant on the privacy end.
Yeah. Well, Sam, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your expertise. I know that you do, independent consulting through S&Z Enterprises or SC Enterprises. And I know personally, I've worked with you. You're very knowledgeable. Be one of the first person that I ever would hire if I was deciding to go back in the mental and behavioral health space or run a call center or a program. So why don't you tell the viewers or listeners how they can get a hold of you, your contact, a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So, yeah, SC Enterprise, we do consulting in the healthcare space. Like Mark said, specialize in behavioral healthcare. You can go to my website, samuelzepstein.com. You can click on my calendar, book like a quick consult. It's free, right? No requirement needed, no commitment needed, anything like that. You can also reach out to me, email contact@samuelzepstein.com. Those two ways are probably the best ways to get a hold of me. We do everything from the marketing side consulting like we were talking about to startup to licensing, credentialing, all of that. So yeah, if you want to get a hold of me, probably through my website, it's probably going to be the best way.
And is that national?
National, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. We're, out of time this week for street level marketing, but we'll be back next week with another show. So stay tuned.
Thanks for having me.